Boom.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ethereum Hot Takes 555. No, just kidding. Number 5. Today we have a full house. Myself, Billy, Joe, Robbie, and we'll get to that in a sec. But we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Round of applause. Everyone's here. We're not going to talk specifically about news, but because price number go up, we're going to all talk about why we're in Ethereum, what got us here, and what keeps us around. So before we get in, I'll let everyone do a quick round of introductions.
You want to start, Games?
Oh, yeah, I'll do it myself. Kames, all around Ethereum dev. And, yeah, we'll explore more during the talk. And I nominate Robbie.
Hey, Robbie, coming out of Portland, Oregon. I consider myself, I guess, to be an adaptive Ethereum member, where I try to coast in and out of what's necessary in that day or perhaps that week, and that is often changing. So it teaches me a lot very quickly. And I'll pass it off to our good King Joe Burnett.
Yeah, I'm Joe. I'm the DAO hacker, and no, I'm just kidding. But I would like to be, and that's probably describes me in a nutshell.
And last but not
Billy.
least, Lucky.
I'm still Billy, still with consensus. Yeah, I just kind of try to do whatever I can to make things happen in this space, and that has involved pivoting to a lot of different roles and a lot of different teams. But yeah, just really passionate about this ecosystem, and I'll get a little bit into why I am passionate about the ecosystem in today's talk. But yeah, that's why I'm here. Just try to move things forward generally.
Cool. Round of applause, everyone. Thank you for the introductions. Excellent. And just for a quick context, just so everybody knows, like, we are a well-rounded group of individuals. We got whales, we got medium-sized whales, we got broke people with like a little bit amount of Ethereum. So it's going to be a good representation of what's going on and why we're here. So I guess the question is, how do we want to kick this off? Should we just kind of all talk about a little bit of how we got in the space, how we found out about it, and then we can dive in a little bit further on what keeps us around, or what do you guys think?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think maybe like a little bit about why we got into the space and why we're still here. A lot of us after like a large number of years. Like what has kept us around? What are we passionate about? Like what gets us up every day and actually working on this stuff?
Cool. On that note, you want to kick us off, Billy, of kind of like how you discovered blockchain, whether it was Bitcoin or Ethereum, or what brought you to the space originally?
Yeah, sure. So, like I don't even know when the first time I guess the first time I heard of Bitcoin was like in the relation to Silk Road, because my friends were buying drugs. Names not to be disclosed. I feel like that's actually a common theme amongst a lot of early adopters with Silk Road. So yeah, I heard about it through that. Honestly, didn't really get it, but what I really loved doing back in the day was, sorry Blizzard, but I loved botting in video games, and I loved like the fact that I could get my computer to play the game for me and like collect loot and level up while I could go like surf or do something else. Like that was like the best feeling in the world for me, like having my computer do work for me while I did other stuff. And so I just learned that, I could get my computer to like make actual dollars for me by mining Bitcoin. So I got involved as like a GP, like an early GPU miner, mined a bunch of different stuff. Heard about Ethereum. So I got very lucky. I was living in San Francisco at the time, still live in San Francisco, but randomly was at a party. This was like, I think March of 2014. Maybe it was like the month before that I heard about it. March was like my first meetup. But yeah, some guy was just like, "Oh, have you heard of Ethereum?" I was like, "No," because we were outside the party just talking about Bitcoin and stuff. And yeah, then I went home and researched it, saw that Vitalik was going to be in town the next week talking at a meetup. And I was like, dude, we got we got to go to this meetup down in it was at like the Hacker Dojo in Palo Alto. And so we went and then met all these like absolutely crazy people who were the smartest people I'd ever met in my entire life. And everyone was like excited about this. And I was like, I didn't really know what everyone was talking about, but I was like, damn, this is where I want to be. You guys seem like you know what's going on, so I'm going to learn more. And so that was the beginning of the end for me. Yeah, I guess the reason why aside from GPU mining, like the reason why I ended up, I guess, pivoting my entire life and career to focus on blockchain was the fact that prior to working in this space, I was a financial services technology consultant. So I worked for Ernst & Young, and through them worked with most of the major financial institutions in the world. Like our clients were basically everyone. And prior to working in that capacity, I always thought that these like big institutions really had their shit together. And I was like, oh, you know, they have trillions of dollars in assets under management. They must really have like rigid processes and really know things that I don't, and they must like really know how to do things well. And then from working with them, they were managing like hundreds of millions of dollars with Excel spreadsheets, and it's absolutely absurd, like the infrastructure that our entire financial sector runs on. It's crazy. And I saw that and I was like, oh my God, we need to I don't even know if this is salvageable. I feel like maybe it's just better to build a parallel financial system from the ground up. And so I think like I've always kind of wanted to, I guess, change the world in some capacity. And it sounds corny, but yeah, I'm an optimist. And so I I feel like the reason I'm here right now is because I feel like Ethereum is the best medium or method for me to actually make an impact on the world, because we're like redesigning systems from the ground up to be better than the current systems. And like every single day it feels like we are actually making a difference and moving humanity forward. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited. That's why I got involved. Do you think that was that all right? Is there anything else we should go into?
Question, Mr. Billy. I think you have a better story probably than most people in the space. So yeah, that was a good one. And I'm going to agree with you definitely on like most people. I know I got introduced through Silk Road. Like it was like 2010. People were like, dude, check out Bitcoin. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you can buy drugs online. And I'm like, no way, bro. So I think that is definitely a common theme. Cool. So I think maybe like we'll get a little bit of opposite perspective. Robbie, do you want to talk a little bit how you got in the space and just like what keeps you in here and what's going on for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I started in this space kind of on offshoot like you guys. I was familiar with the Silk Road, but that's not what brought me in. So a while ago, actually, when the first iPhone came out, I was really into jailbreaking iPhones. And so I started to look at what it took to like open up the kernels and to unlock them. So if somebody bought it for T-Mobile and they wanted to use it for AT&T or something like that, there was a market for that. So I got pretty crafty at opening up phones, and I made some random deal on Craigslist, which obviously is some 2 a.m. Arby's parking lot thing. And I met a guy and he was just like, yo, how about I give you some Bitcoin instead of like USD? And I was just like, I don't know, but why not kind of thing. So I agreed, got some Bitcoin for it, went home, should have probably read up on it first, but decided if it's an L, I'll take it. Read up on Bitcoin, was really interested in it. Shortly after that, a few of my buddies and I started discussing it more, built a rig, we were mining, got really interesting. Life started to take over. So then I had to kind of pivot more toward consulting when it came toward specialty coffee and smaller restaurants and things like that. So that was my space for a long time, but always tried to keep my finger on the pulse in terms of what was going on with technology, what was going on with Bitcoin. I was kind of familiar with Ethereum, but admittingly I had to dig deeper. Once I had some more time on my own and I realized the potential that Ethereum had in terms of use cases, I grew really, really interested in that. So it just became this impossible rabbit hole of falling down into it. realized if I'm going to have any legs to stand in this field, I need to learn how to code on a more professional manner, or at least be more familiar with the scene. Took myself to a coding boot camp, applied for an internship with Consensus, and you three sweet gentlemen gave me my opportunity to start in the field. So what now keeps me in it, similar to Billy, is I believe that Ether, not to over romanticize it, can very much change the way that we operate on a global level. Like this can really change a lot, and no matter how grand the engine might be, they all need cogs. And if I can be a cog to make that engine run, I'd be more than happy to do that. And now that Ethereum is no longer just like gas for these ICO battles, and we see this forthcoming of it's starting to be really interesting with non-refundable tokens when it comes to crypto gaming, we're seeing these use cases start to spread out, and that just gets me more excited. And every day having stand up with you guys and conversations with, people in the space, that pumps me up every single day to actively work toward making this an approachable scene for particularly like junior devs like myself, which I really take to heart. A lot of people can contribute now, and I think that's super powerful. So it's kind of a little cluster as to where I'm coming from.
Cool. That's super awesome. I didn't know, you didn't tell us the Bitcoin story before.
Yeah.
Where you got an iPhone and you traded that.
Yeah. That ended up being pretty expensive for that guy.
Yeah. Hey. Well timed.
Perfect.
Cool. That's awesome. Joe, should we Rochambeau for who's going next? How do we want to pick who's gonna do the next one? You are on mute once again.
I think you should go.
Okay, cool. I can do that.
Yeah.
And Joe, you'll clean up the house at the end. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. So I have a kind of a similar start as you, Billy, where I first introduced. I think it was about like 2010. I had neighbors down the street who were just like, they BitTorrented for everybody. Like if you wanted a burnt CD and like you wanted like stuff that like no one else could get, they had the fastest internet and were always kind of doing the latest and greatest on the internet. And so, I went down to Buddy's house and like was like, hey, can you burn me a CD? And he, like when he was burning me a CD, he's like, yo, check this out. There's Bitcoin, there's Silk Road. And he like introduced me at that point. So I remember it was like about a year right after Bitcoin came out. It was still below $1. And it was just like blew my mind that could happen. So I remember like as soon as that, what? As soon as that happened, like, yeah, I had a different sense of what was possible. But I think for a long time, like was too young, didn't do anything with it. And then around 20 years old was when Occupy New York happened. And I ended up actually like doing Occupy San Francisco for several months, like sleeping out on the street, camping in front of the Federal Reserve, like marching, doing all that kind of stuff. And there was one moment explicitly that like stands out super strong for me was I remember there was a big push to basically close down the Oakland ports. Like people basically wanted to shut down the shipping to basically prove a point. And it felt kind of weird to me. It was like, all right, we want to take back kind of a means of control, our own commerce. People are upset with the Federal Reserve and just how things are working. But if we shut down these ports, like we're not going to be able to feed people. And I felt like very conflicted. It was like this moment of like, okay, yeah, we want to make a difference, but like we're actively harming people. And I think like that moment for me left a bad taste in my mouth and really like planted the seed that if we're going to make change, we really have to like control our systems much better. And so when Ethereum came out and we could actually like build these tools that allow us to like make a better system and just not tear one down, like that is what caught my eye and kind of what keeps me in the space now. Whether we're close to that yet, I don't know, is pretty debatable. But that was kind of like the aha moment for me and how I ended up getting into space and then sticking around.
I think we're getting pretty close, man. I mean, we're definitely not there yet, but DeFi feels like it's trending in there. It's actually, I feel like we've done more than I thought we would have in the amount of time that has elapsed. So pretty bullish. Sorry.
Yeah, that's true too. Like a lot of people would like give us slack for like, oh, there's not a lot of users, not a lot going on. But if you think about like what's really happening, it's Pretty impressive.
Dude, I just like wrote a big message in the consensus Slack that was like, because, yeah, I was just like, you know, and I actually tweeted this too, but we've only like Bitcoin hasn't been around for that long, but Ethereum has only been it was devised like 6 years ago. And from that time we've gone from like a bunch of nerds sitting in like a small room in Palo Alto to being like a topic of discussion amongst the most powerful people and institutions in the world. It's pretty crazy, and I don't think we give ourselves enough slack. People are like, why aren't we scalable yet? Why don't we have like this and that? Like, why don't we have this alternative financial system yet? And we're like, it's been 6 years. Like,
Yeah.
I think we've done so much in that amount of time. That's actually pretty incredible if you think about it. So I don't know. I think we should give ourselves a little pat on the back for getting as far as we have so fast.
Yeah, we definitely have. But we also.
What was that one?
I'm Batman.
All right, we might need someone else to control the soundboard.
Yeah, I'm working out the kinks in my soundboard.
I feel like it's a perfect transition into
Surprise,
Joe's,
motherfucker.
into Joe's story.
All right, I was going to comment, but I think, Joe, you've taken the thunder, and it's going to be your turn right now.
Surprise,
All
motherfucker.
right. So, yeah, no, I'll kind of glance over my history in the space, but I have a very similar path in that I was introduced to the concept of digital currency, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin through the Silk Road and friends using the Silk Road. It kind of blew my mind, and like I've always had like, you know, a libertarian spirit that really appealed to was realizing that like, whoa, people are buying drugs online with this crazy new currency because they don't want to use their credit cards online. Like, that's really cool. Like, you can buy drugs anonymously online. Like, sweet. Well, then I go and research about Bitcoin. It's like, oh, that's not really anonymous, but it's pretty damn cool how it works. You know, the Bitcoin white paper is like my my Bible for a while. I you know, preached it from the streets. And so I got very, you know, philosophically involved in the Bitcoin space, and it just really, like, you know, spoke to me. So when Ethereum was just getting started, I had sort of like been in the Bitcoin space a while, and I had been following along with like some of the internal like developer politics, and I don't know, I just sort of started seeing the sort of nastier side to the Bitcoin politics, and kind of growing, not disillusioned with it, because I still believe in, you know, the cryptocurrency as a project or as a concept, and even Bitcoin as a project. But about the time Mike Hearn wrote Mike Hearn, one of the original Bitcoin core developers, quit, and he wrote sort of a scathing rebuke of some of the activities going on in the Bitcoin space. It really sort of put words to what I was sort of feeling and seeing. So around the same time Ethereum had launched, it was in its very early days, and so I decided that I was going to shift all my energy to Ethereum. So I read the Ethereum white paper and yellow paper, and you know, downloaded the ETH client, the C++ ETH client, the Geth client, tried running them both at the same time because I had no idea what I was doing. I lost my key store a couple times. I, like, you know, just spent all of my energy in my spare time just at home working on figuring out how Ethereum worked. And basically I said I wasn't going to go into it, but I just went into it. But no, it was really cool to me to see that this core concept, that Bitcoin, this amazing invention that is Bitcoin that Satoshi came up with and implemented, to see it built upon with Ethereum, to see, so Vitalik, who was an early involved in crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, he was seeing people trying to do things with Bitcoin and trying to do things with the opcodes of Bitcoin that Bitcoin wasn't necessarily designed for, but that was really cool use cases. People are trying to create colored coins. People are trying to store things on the Bitcoin blockchain, and that's all really cool. But Bitcoin wasn't designed for that, and its rigidity in its opcodes was sort of an inhibitor for those types of use cases. So I think that it's really cool that that's sort of where Ethereum was born out of, was let's take this really cool technology of Bitcoin and let's make it programmable. Let's make it so that all these use cases that people are trying to do, they can do. And I think he did a really good job of keeping it pure in terms of, like, it's still at its core runs on proof of work, just like Bitcoin does. It still maintains all the decentralization of it. And we see a lot of other coins sort of with all these hybrid, like, pseudo decentralization. But like, I think that Ethereum really kept the Bitcoin sort of ethos alive while adding a huge layer of innovation, which is the EVM and its programmability. So not only now is it digital money, it's digital, decentralized, powerful applications that run on this network. So yeah, I that's really why, and that's what got me involved, and that those fundamentals of what got me interested in the space have not changed to this day. And I think it's been really cool in the, literally like 5 years I've been involved in this space, to see like the market effect of Ethereum continuing in terms of its, Ethereum was the first to pioneer this concept of, okay, blockchain plus programmability. And honestly, like, can you even name a dApp that runs on another network? I can't. I guess it's because I'm an Ethereum nerd, but also, like, just think about, I can name probably 100 dApps that run on Ethereum and that have users right now. It's just, the space has really blossomed since that 5 years ago, and I think it still has a long way to go. But what's really cool is also seeing how much development is continuing in the space. There's the core developers, and there's the harmony among different teams even working on it. I mean, there's obviously politics in every decentralized ecosystem, but I think just that, I'm kind of all over the map here, but there's a number of reasons that keep me in the Ethereum space, bullish on Ethereum, and yeah, just loving being a part of this ecosystem. So sorry if that was long, but
that was awesome.
Yeah.
No. Batman, best one yet.
Yeah. I want to touch on that last piece too a little bit. Like the politics of Ethereum. Sure, there's some disagreements, but it's going pretty well. And I think a lot of that has to do with the community it's attracted. Like one of the big reasons I got so heavily involved in Ethereum initially was, like, I previously was going to these Bitcoin meetups, and like they were attracting a certain type of person, and that type of person didn't resonate too much with me. Like, it resonated with me more than just like regular people, but it seemed like a lot of those people were just in it for the money in the Bitcoin space. And then, like, I went to these early Ethereum meetups, and every person there didn't care about the money at all. They were like just trying to build like a decentralized future, and I was like, this is way more interesting to me. Like I much more heavily resonate with these people. And so I think because the people in the Ethereum space are kind of like the ICO boom kind of attracted a lot of those people that were in it for the money. But prior to the ICO boom, I would say like a majority of people were really in it for the right reasons. And that has just kind of continued to this day, where most of like the core developer type folks are are just really here for the tech. And I don't understand a lot of the heat that we get from Bitcoin maximalists, because like, as you see, all of us were Bitcoin maximalists at first. Like we like we loved Bitcoin, and I still hold Bitcoin, and I am not against Bitcoin at all. It's just like Ethereum is just trying to do so much more and is doing so much more already. And so it's really cool to see where we are, where we come from.
Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is everyone's story into Ethereum.
So I forgot to mention, I was a Dogecoin maximalist for a while, though.
Oh.
I don't know if that discredits everything that I've said.
A little bit.
That shit was fun.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting story too. I don't think we should totally get into it right now, but just like why it took off and like what they were trying to like prove is pretty interesting. But we are called Ethereum Hot and Spicy, so I feel like we have to add once again a little bit of Ethereum Hot and Spicy. And so Joe, you mentioned Bitcoin and just like, you know, a lot about Bitcoin and just like what the fundamentals of that are. And I think, you know, a lot of discussion around Bitcoin is this limit that Bitcoin has, the 21 million, and that Ethereum does not. And so I want to propose the question of once we get to that 21 million limit, what do people feel like is going to happen? Are we going to reach enough usage where the transaction fees are going to pay miners? Or is the Bitcoin network going to be in trouble because no more block rewards, no more miners?
Dude, you were dropping a straight bomb.
Yeah. I know.
Pause for a second.
Joe, no.
So you could fill not just a podcast episode. You could create a podcast around this topic, and have economists come in and talk about it. Like, I feel unqualified to even have too much of an opinion on that. So I don't really have a good answer for you, but that's a hotly debated topic and a very, like, in the interest of time here and limiting us to just having more things to talk about in the future.
All right, then let's do a 30-second hot take. Where do you think Bitcoin's going to be in 20 years?
Okay, let's start. Do you want to start with me, or do you want to? Let's go in the same order. I want to go last.
I don't want to go first.
I want to copy everyone else's answers.
All right, I'll go first.
20. Okay.
Teams,
yeah,
go first.
I'll go first.
Wait,
All right,
James.
so, yes.
Where do you think Bitcoin's going to be in 20 years?
Where I think Bitcoin is going to be in 20 years is that the fundamentals are going to require it to fork. And so there's going to be the same chain, and whatever happens with that chain, fine. But there's going to be a fork when it gets closer to 21 million, and it's going to either be captured by the miners or a cohort of bankers who realize the economics don't work, and they're going to fork a new chain. And if you want to continue to have low fees, you're going to have to switch to that other network. And the one with 21 million won't have your average user because that's only going to be the super rich. So this old chain is going to be exclusively for the super rich, which I don't really feel like falls under Bitcoin's original intended purpose. And the second chain that's inevitable if you want, you know, everyday users is going to have to fork. And we're going to go above the 21 million. So that's my answer in 20 years.
Love it. I'll go next. I think in 20 years, Vitalik will probably be elected God Emperor of the universe, and Ethereum will have overtaken everything in the world and it just be integrated into all of our daily lives. And so I actually just thought this right now. Like, what if Bitcoin, we just like we already have these bridges over to Ethereum, like with BTC. What if like the future state of Bitcoin is just existing on Ethereum? Like you do one transaction, lock them all up, port them all over to Ethereum, and then you transact them via Ethereum. And like only in a very rare case, you do stuff on Bitcoin. And so in that sense, there will be basically no incentive for miners to mine because the transaction fees will be basically nothing. And so I don't think the transaction fees are going to be enough to secure the network. So I don't really know what happens over there, but maybe there'll be some like altruistic miners who just like continue to mine and that can be sufficiently decentralized. I highly doubt it, but I don't know. That's my hot take. 20 years, Bitcoin exists on Ethereum almost entirely.
I just want to say, good answer, big brain. That was big brain answer, Billy. That might have been the best one. Oh, we don't know. We still got 2 left, but that was pretty damn good. All right.
I'll go next. We'll keep Joe for last. I don't know. I haven't thought about it a ton, but Kames, I have a tendency to agree with you a little bit in terms of your take, what it's going to look like. I think Bitcoin obviously is going to exist. I think when that 21 mil happen, I think it's going to be this like ultra exclusive territory that outside of a small percentage of perhaps those are holding. I think the use case won't really be there. I don't think it'll be, while I think it'll be valuable, I think it'll also be sort of useless. And at that point, I think because of the use cases that Ethereum is presenting, and just as we've talked about what we've done in the last 6 years, in 20 years, that's pretty incredible as to the potential. So I think that the adoption of Ethereum across everything will be massive. Bitcoin will still be this strange staple, but won't do anything other than perhaps be this status symbol, I think, perhaps. But it's all about Ether, I think.
Love it. Got the sizzle. All right. The best for last, Joe Burnett.
I wouldn't put much stock in my thoughts on this because it's definitely not something I give a lot of energy to. But I think we're going to see Ethereum overtake Bitcoin in terms of market cap in the next anytime in the next 1 to 5 years, maybe. I think especially if / when ETH 2.0 launches and sort of starts to prove itself, when we start seeing sharding become a real scaling solution, and we see, when we see some of these innovations that are coming down the pipeline, sort of working on mainnet Ethereum at scale, I think that will drive enough confidence to give Ethereum a boost, potentially lifting it over Bitcoin in market cap. And I think that sort of might be just kind of a death knell for Bitcoin in general. It'll be, I don't think Bitcoin will ever die necessarily, but I think that it will not be as big of a player in terms of like the long-term. Like in 20 years, I don't think that Bitcoin will be a major player in the cryptocurrency space anymore. It'll be sort of a legacy cool thing that, we could stay alive, but I just don't, I just see so much more relevancy to Ether and Ethereum and coins on Ethereum and the economies that are going to be created by Ethereum. And I think that's an Ethereum maximalist point of view. So, take that with a container of salt. But yeah, Bitcoin, it will be that cool little, thing that you can tell your kids about that you were involved in. Not much more than that.
Damn. I think maybe it has a chance as gold. I actually, for the first time, totally random and off topic, but I just bought some like gold and silver bars. Anyone have any of those?
I've got silver.
Nice. I kind of just want to look at it and like see what they look like. I feel like they'll probably look pretty nice.
One of the biggest mines in the world for silver is actually in Tasco, Mexico, which is about 3 hours south of Mexico City. You boys ever want to go down there and get some silver?
I'm down to get some silver. Why not? But yeah, I am not a precious gold bug. Oh, is that like Windows?
We're hitting errors because we're talking about off-topic things.
Oh, sorry. Let's bring us back.
Here's a question. Do you think we're talking about 20 years from now, and we're talking about what BTC looks like and and Ethereum looks like? Do you think both of those within 20 years could be rendered as legacy and something will overtake it? Like, will there be something
Nah, dude.
that
Not Ether.
Yes. And Billy's not going to sell any of his Ether, and it's all going to go down to zero, and he's going to be pissed.
Probably. It's been my strategy thus far. Hodl forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the only thing that could potentially hamper us is our governance still around how we manage protocol changes and updates. Like, I still think it's a little naive to just think this like ragtag group of like devs, which are doing an amazing job, but like aren't necessarily making decisions fast when it's like really contentious. And you're seeing this around like the Prague Pow debate. Like, it's quickly becoming a meme not to have a real debate around it and like just to kind of bicker at each other. And I think if there's anything, it's going to be a team who like figures out a way to have real strong governance at that protocol level. But if not, I think we'll be just fine.
The only argument I have against that is the fact that, and I don't mean to sound like a Vitalik maximalist, but I am. I feel like he is the smartest, most objective person kind of out there. And so he is like the best arbiter of disputes. And so if there's like a super contentious topic, like, I mean, Prague Pal is just like, it's kind of more, I'd say, I don't know. That's a weird one. But for these like major, actually important things, I feel like Vitalik, I kind of trust him to guide the direction and in the correct direction and to be like a very good arbiter of these situations if need be. And no other protocol can like really ever have that. So if Vitalik for some reason pivots away from Ethereum, then maybe that chain has a chance. But ultimately, I don't know. I'll be Vitalik's disciple and follow him wherever he goes, probably.
Yeah. So stay tuned next week for what makes the Ethereum blockchain the one true Ethereum. Forks and the politics of blockchain.
I like that.
And on that note, Ethereum hot spicy takes
Wow,
over.
beautiful.